explain about the continuation of speech act and indirect speech act. Let's come to the first one. Well, as you already understand in the previous presentation that speech act is, according to Grundy 2008, say that we use words in our talk to act and to perform our intention. So it means that the function of the language itself is not only to express our belief, our ideas, or share information, but it's also to perform or to express our intention. It could be like an action. And then the next is, according to you, she also stated that action performed via utterances are called as speech act. This is, for example, like we want another people to have or to respond or to act like what we intend them to do something. And to remind you about the previous presentation, the most important in the speech act theory is the first is locution. Do you still remember what is locution? Is there still? Remember what is locution? Locution is the basic utterances which come from the speaker.
Thank you.
Or is it actually have a good word order or the grammatical or something like that? This basic utterances. Maybe we cannot only understand the sentences by only the surface form of the utterances, but we need elocution. The elocution is the meaning or the intention behind why the speaker say something. The intention of the speaker or the locutor. And then the third is prolocution. Prolocution is the effect that the speaker or locutor want their hearer or audience to do what they mean. And then the classification, it is assertive, expressive, declarative, declaration, and commissive. Well, this is maybe the illustration of how the locution, elocution, and prolocution have related each other. And we see this in the bigger scope. This is utterances, but behind the utterances, there is a proportional utterances that refers to other things. It means that when we say something, there should be a reference to other things. And then have elocutionary utterances. The intention behind that why the speaker wants to iterate this or why the speaker utter these utterances. And then its prolocutionary utterances is the intention to affect behavior. So that the speaker use speech act to make their hearer or their audiences to understand and to do what they intend them to do. Or it's made like an act. Okay, I give you an example. This is, I need something to eat right now. Sorry. Well, it should be come later, but I forgot to edit it. So as you see, when someone say, I need something to eat right now, maybe we can assume that in the utterances, you may think, why she said it because he or he is hungry and need something to eat. It's called locution. This is what only we hear in the surface. And then after, if we analyze the intention behind the utterances, maybe we can find that the person who said what you want, the person said it. For example, your friend beside you said that I need something to eat right now. What would come to your mind? Do you think same as I write here? Do you have different assumption?
That's cool. Yeah.
Okay, for example, Winda is eating right now.
Yes, that's right.
And then
I just said
Astria said that I need something to eat right now.
exactly this way.
Winda to share her food to her.
It says to
No
start.
thanks.
Shine to
But
say.
the prolocution
Or-
is the
Yeah, something like. And then the
Feel.
prolocution here. Prolocution is what the speaker intention. Astria want Winda to buy or to go or to share something like that. As you can see here. And the next is, may I see your car? What is coming in your mind when you see these utterances?
You have a car.
You have a car?
You but it's a
And can you imagine the situation here? May I see your car?
I want to get inside.
Yes, you are.
Bro, yeah.
And about the place?
And house.
Which place? Yes.
My house.
A house, okay. And then?
Dealer.
And then?
The parking lot. Garage.
Sorry, get what? Right on. Okay.
The rice.
Something like that. And then we should see, of course, we should understand first the context or where the utterances take place first. For example, maybe in the first utterances, there is have happened in the road when your car is broken, and then someone say to you, "May I see your car?" Do you know what is the intention of that person?
I will help you.
Yeah,
want-
that the
I will
person
steal
want
the
to help you, maybe something like that. But it can be different if the situation or if the place is differences. And let's come to the next example. First, let's go to the movie tomorrow, and then the B say my assignment deadline is due tomorrow. What is he infer or what is his intention or her intention? Say this one.
Do you want to
Because
join?
we want to go to the movie.
You don't want to go to the movie. Why? Because
My assignment deadline.
and that's yes, he may be or she may be say that he is busy right now. So yes, yeah, busy or lazy or something like that. Whatever the reason is. And also, in the third example, there is a snake in her backyard. What do you think it is? Is it a warning, declaration, statement, or what is it?
You can be statement.
It can be a statement.
You say
And also it can be a warning.
It can be a command as well.
Okay, it can be a command because maybe if it is a command, there is a snake in her backyard. Maybe the friend is like snake, yeah. And then he was very happy to see snake, and then someone say that there is a snake in her backyard. Or if it's warning, maybe she just say if there is a snake in her backyard, and he want to say that be careful and something like that. And also, if it is just a statement, maybe just assertion or just want to express, yeah. Maybe someone say this because she just want to give the information in her backyard is there is a snake. So the next is we should about the speech act is the same elocution can be represented different act. Just like the previous example, I said that one utterances can be a warning, can be a statement, or can be a comment, something like that. And then the problem is how to recognize the illocutionary force or intended function from the speaker. And this is illocutionary force. There is two ways to recognize the illocutionary force or to recognize the intention behind of the utterances. The first one is illocutionary force indicating device or IFA. This is divided into several like word order, maybe the utterances. The order of the word should be grammatical or structural, and then intonation it should be can be we can know what the meaning of the utterances if we take attention of the intonation, and then the stress, and then for performative verb. The example is like, I want you to not cross this bridge. Okay, maybe it can be different. Is I want you to not cross this bridge. Of course not. you should take attention to intonation and stress and performative work. But all in the IFID is maybe only we can see on the surface of the utterances. But how to recognize the intention behind the utterances or the locutionary forces behind the utterances? Then we should use the felicity condition, or in other words, it is appropriateness. It is actually the simple word to explain what is felicity condition. And then let's come to the felicity condition. As you see that felicity condition is a context and situation that allow us to recognize a speech act as intended by the speaker. And also, felicity condition must be fulfilled for a speech act to be satisfactory, performed, or realized. So that felicity condition is the context and situation that surrounded in the utterances. So we can understand, like the previous example that I give you. But may I see your car? If it is happen in the parking area or private parking, maybe it can be different. The person who asked maybe apartment.
Party man.
Yeah. And then if the other things happen in the road and your car is broken, and then someone say, "May I see your car?" Maybe she want or he want to help you. Yeah. There is a felicity condition. But felicity condition is not only limited on the context and the situation. But according to Alston and Sir, he said that there is several rules to recognize elocutionary force. This is from Alston felicity condition on performative. He said that the first one, how to recognize is it a good or felicitous utterances or not? The first, we should consider there must be a conventional procedure having a conventional effect. Ask the speaker, maybe ask the speaker before we utter or we use speech act to our hearer or audience. We should consider it's mostly about like the culture or the habits of a person or a group of person where we live or where we want to say it. Because maybe from the group, one group and another group have different habit or culture in saying something. So we should consider this first. And then the circumstance and person must be appropriate as specified in the procedure. Like when I say that I was only a student, but then I say that Pak Abu is go to South Korea last week, for example. Maybe you just don't understand, you just don't believe me because I'm only a student. How can I know what the activity of the lecturer have? But if the person who said it is maybe Pak Didi, maybe you will just believe it, because he is a lecturer. Of course he knows, maybe he knows, and of course he knows, And then next is the procedure must be executed correctly and completely. It is also related to the inherent culture, and then often the person must have the requisite thought, feeling, and intention as specified in the procedure. And so before saying the speech act, the speaker should be also consider her or his audience or his hearer, and it's also important in consequent conduct is specified, and the relevant parties must also do. Okay, it is related that of course the way we talk in the children and the way we talk with the lecturer or the way we talk with the friend is different according to the person. Okay, the next is from the Searle's felicity condition on speech act. Actually, Searle's felicity condition is much related or similar to what Austin proposed, but he but he categorized and classified it to be more understood by us. Like there is some rules that should be followed, and it must be suitable to type of egg. From Austin Commission, source create 4 basic categories. The first one is proportional content. There is correspondence between content and linguistic choice. It is related to, the first one what they say is there must be professional, or it's related to the culture, the habit, or it's the content. The content that we want to say is must be clear and appropriate or suitable to the hearer or to the audience. And then the preparatory conditions. This is the person performing a speech act has authority to do so. This is what I say to you before, like it depends on the person. The reaction of the hearer or the audiences, it can be different depending on the person who say it. And then sincerity condition. The participant must have appropriate thought, feeling, and intention. It means that she wants someone to do this, and then he should have the appropriate thought, feeling, and intention. Then the last one is essential condition. The speaker intention to carry out intention express. So it means that this is the way the speaker or the locutor say must be expressed well, or the utterances must be expressed what the speaker want intention to say. So that is can be a successful communication. But if the speakers told something, but then he said something different, it can be miscommunication, or in the speech act as it's called as infelicitus, or the communication cannot be successful or miscommunicated. Okay, let's take a look at the example. What can you see from this one? And what do you think? Who she is, or who is she? Who is she?
Mom,
And this one
Mom.
is
son,
look like your children, right? And then sorry, the child. And then the mom said, "Coffee. What are you doing to the coffee table? Is it really a question?" Does she know what the child do with the table? And then she asked, "What are you doing to the coffee table? Is it really a question?"
no,
Kind of prohibition.
Yes. It's anger, and then
First.
because the child is maybe too young to understand what the meaning of her mother intention or implies in her question. Maybe she said, "Is this some sort of trick question or what?" Because the child know that the mom have seen that he did something to the table. So sometimes the speech act, even though the structure is look like interrogative, but the function itself is not to asking or to demand the information, but rather he want the command to the child to stop what he is doing. So maybe the next we will learn about this later in indirect speech. The next section will be explained by Heather.
Thank you. Okay, we are continuing last week about speech act. The first session already explained by Pevina that give a brief explanation about direct speech and the classification of speech act. And then my friend Rahmi Indriani also continue to explain about the sound condition that support the speech act, like felicity condition. Okay, now before I come to dig more about indirect speech, I will explain you about comparative principle first, about Paul Chris Maxim. Well, actually, Maxim or cooperative principle is not part of speech act. It's part of implicature and conversational theory. But I'll explain it because last week there was a question that asks how if the the hearer or the listener didn't understand about what the speaker said, or maybe the listener or the hearer didn't get the intended meaning, didn't get the illusionary act, and instead of doing what the speaker intended to do, the listener or the hearer didn't do it. For example, if you say "it's cold here," which means that maybe your intended meaning is you want someone to open the window, but that one didn't understand about that the utterances or the intended meaning that you already said. So here, Paul Grice developed a theory called cooperative principle, where he assumed that the speakers cooperate to get meaning to make an effective conversation. So the goal of the conversation is we get the same perspective or get a mutual conversation. But unfortunately, some conversation maybe didn't run well, didn't go well, because the hearer or listener didn't understand about the speaker intended meaning. So, in creating or in making a good conversation, we have to follow the cooperative principle explained by this Grice, that there are 4 types of maxim or cooperative principle that have to be obeyed in order to make a good conversation or mutual conversation. The first one is the quality, where the information that you give have to be accurate, true, and have adequate evidence. So be truthful. And then the second one is the quantity, maxim of quantity, where the speaker have to say or have to give enough information, and is there too much or maybe less information given because the hearer didn't get the idea, maybe the information is not complete. Or the next one, the third one is maxim of relation, where the information that the speaker gives have to be relevant or nyambung, we say that. And then maxim of manner, where the information has to be clear, obscure, unambiguous, and concise. So have to be clear. What is your purpose in saying something? You have to be clear. So if you violate it or float it, if you break this maxim, the misunderstanding will happen. So this is the example when the girl asks her mom about what's wrong with that parent's mom, but her mom didn't say the true condition, didn't say the true feelings about her mothers and fathers-in-laws. So she said another, she made an excuse or she lied. Yes, one of the effect of the violating the maxim is that you lie to another person, you give the wrong information. So that's why. Luckily the girl is understand about why her mom doing that her mom is lying. But in other situation, maybe if you violated this maxim of quality, you can be accused for giving the wrong information. So this is like just a funny example, but it can be a serious effect if you giving the wrong information to other people. The next, the violating of maxim of quantity is by the speaker do not give the enough information, or maybe he only give the less information. For example, the parent asks his child, "Did you finish your homework?" Then the child only answer, "I finished my algebra." While the parents know that the child have 2 homeworks, English and algebra, but the child only say, "I finished my algebra." So the child didn't give the full information, or just give less information to his parents, maybe because he's scared that his parents getting angry. But the parents know, so he said that, "Well, get busy and finish your English." And then the next one is, this could be worse maybe if you didn't give much adequate information. Someone else will be beaten by the dog. Yes. why the speaker B didn't say in affirmation. This is, we will talk about in implicature hidden meaning, but this is the result if you didn't follow the maxim of quantity. Someone else will be beaten by the dog. And you also can be accused for this. Okay, and then the violating of maxim of relation. You're not relevant in giving the answer. The mother getting angry and asks her boy, Jeremy, why can't you put this in the dishwasher instead of in the sink? Maybe Jeremy is lazy, he didn't want to do it because he's a boy maybe. So he gave another excuse by giving an answer
Physiology.
He gives another theory, complicated theory about why that human cannot do impossible to reach below the eye level. So it's not relevant with the question of his mother. And then his mother got angry. She asked, but she doesn't listen. Maybe she wasn't asking. Yes, his mother getting angry why he didn't do the job properly, and he gives an unrelevant answer to his mother. So this is like making excuse, And this is maxim violating maxim of manner, when you are not being clear, not precise, and give ambiguity to the listener.
Piano.
So the grandma asks, what is playing? Maybe the grandma wants to know the song that's playing, but the kids catch another idea. Maybe the grandma asks, what kind of musical instrument we're playing that time? So the grandma asking about the song, but the little girl, think that the grandma asking about the musical instrument, a piano playing, while the grandma is want to know about the song. So that's will happen if you violating the cooperative principle. So you have to consider that form of maxim. Okay, now I come up to my real topic, indirect speech. Okay, before that, this is the clear differences, comparison between direct speech acts and indirect speech acts. Simply that in the indirect speech acts, there is the relationship between the structure, form, and communicative function. So direct speech have the same or the equal structural form and communicative function. For example, you use declarative in making a statement, like you wear a seatbelt. That's direct speech act. Giving information using statement, so equal between the form and function. And then another example is interrogative. It's used to ask questions. Do you wear a seatbelt? It's really that the speaker wants to know whether you wear a seatbelt. So she used the interrogative in asking question. So form and function is equal. And then imperative is used to make a comment. Wear a seatbelt. So imperative is equal by using the common function. While in indirect speech acts, Sir already defined that is performed by means of another. So there is another meaning behind the utterances. In indirect relationship, there is indirect relationship between form and function. So form and function do not equal. For example, here, interrogative is used to make a request. Could you pass the salt? Misalkan kamu memberikan garam itu, the request in form of interrogative. So the next example is declarative is used to make a request. You are standing in front of the TV because maybe you want to watch TV, but someone else standing right in front of TV, and actually you want that person move out. But rather than giving imperative or asking a request, you just give a statement. You are standing in front of TV, so it's indirect speech. You are asking a request by giving statement. So there is no correspondence between the form and function. So it is another more example. For example, in making assertion or assertive, to make claim, is ice cold? This is like a rhetorical question that you don't need to answer it because everybody knows that ice is cold. So you just emphasize your claims. Is ice cold? You ask another person in the form of interrogative. Well, when you want to ask question, you use declarative form by making a statement like, I want to know who opened the window. Actually, you are asking question, but you use declarative form. And then, in making a request, you use also declarative form by saying the dishes are not washed yet. Actually, you want somebody else to wash the dishes, but you use the statement. And then you also use the interrogative form in asking request by questioning, would you mind washing the dishes? So in the interrogative form, you want to asking request. And then in the command, you use interrogative form by why don't you leave? It means that you want that person is leave. You command the person to leave, but you use the interrogative form. Okay. Now in Indirect Speech Act, if the speaker A said, imagine in the context that you want to go past the door, you want to go through the door, but there is someone else standing in front of the door, and then you say, could you move over a bit? So, and then the person only said, yes, perhaps I could, but he didn't move. So the speaker B didn't, whether he didn't understand or maybe he didn't want to move. He has his own reason. But the speaker B is not cooperative with speaker A. The speaker A actually didn't need an answer. He didn't need to answer yes or no, but just move. So he intends to make a request. So based on John Searle, explain that in indirect speech, another differences with direct speech is in indirect speech there are two illocutionary acts. While in direct speech only one illocutionary act. Okay, like the example before, you give a comment or request, could you move a bit by giving a question, yes, and then the secondary illocutionary act is actually asking the question. So the secondary or the utterances is literal, but the primary illocutionary act or the intended meaning is not literal. You get it? I hope you get it. So there is two illocutionary acts. The first one is the utterances that the speaker said, which is literal, but the other one is the intended meaning, which is not literal. So there is two illocutionary acts in indirect speech based on Searle definition. Okay, now we come to another example. For example, this person giving proposal or giving a plan like, let's go to the movies tonight. And then the speaker B said, I have to study for an exam. So maybe we can catch the idea that the speaker B give an excuse that she cannot go to the movies tonight because she has an exam, so she has to study. But the speaker A giving proposal or request by using imperative form, let's go to the movies tonight, while the speaker B rejecting the proposal by using statement. So I have to study for an exam. Both are cooperative because we assume that the speaker A and the speaker B get the meaning of the conversation. So even if we see in the surface that the conversation doesn't match at all because she asked to go to the movies and the speaker B said I have to study. So actually it doesn't match, but the meaning, the cooperative principle, they get the cooperative the same perception that the person or the speaker B is rejecting. So this is the logical reasoning by Searle. How we analyze the indirect speech. Actually this is simple, but he broke down into 10 steps. Okay, we analyze one by one. The first one is when A has uttered the proposal or asking the B to go to the movies, and then the B making a statement about studying about an exam, A assumes B is cooperative. So there is maximum of relevance here.
And then the relevant answer in when somebody asks you or giving proposal to you, the relevant answer is accept or reject it or giving another suggestion. And in fact, if we see the utterances between A and B, there is no relevant answer matches, because if we only say the literal utterances, the speaker B only said, I have to study for an exam. C doesn't say yes or no. And then, the step number 5, the logical number 5 is B means more. So the primary intention is different from, it has to be her actually, different from his secondary one. So his primary illustrationary act is different than his secondary illustrationary act. She means more. And then number 6, logical reasoning, the factual or shared information that we know that if somebody said if she has studied, she has an exam, we know that she has to study, and we know that, like number 7, B cannot combine two things. B cannot go to the movies and studies because it will be interrupt her time or his time. So the speaker, he has to choose go to the movies or study for an exam. And based on the felicity condition, in preparatory condition for speech act, that if we dealing with proposal, it's just two options: your ability to accept the proposal or your willingness to accept or not accept the proposal. And then we come to the 9th step. The bis utterance is all in likelihood is meant to tell that she cannot accept the proposal. So the bis primary intention is to reject as proposal. Okay, now we come to the last one, the pragmatic view about speech act and indirect speech. This is quite heavy stuff for me to read it. So based on the main theory that language is standardized and codifies the symbolic representation of institution. So we use direct speech, we use indirect speech in order to create a symbol in our community. So, for example, like the language that we use in military, in medical, in law is very, very different. So each institution has their own symbol. For example, when the judge says, I sentence you to death, it's the judge between the prisoner. This is the authority of the judge to give the sentence to the prisoner. Or maybe the doctor give an explanation about your disease. So this is the authority of the doctor. And then the society standardized certain linguistic symbolization in order to perform certain and appropriate function to the existence and survival of the institution. So our community create institution, and because of that, they create a standard language or standard speech act to for the sake of the institution. Like in marriage, maybe we have a strict speech act. For example, the priest said, I pronounce you husband and wife. So this is the strict or the symbolization of the marriage invitation in order to make a couple as husband and wife. And based on May, he explained that actually by using indirect speech, it is more effective way of getting one's act than using regular speech act. So based on the last explanation by he said that when you are using more indirect speech, it shows that you have a high level of knowledge. Because in indirect speech, we will exercise our critical thinking. So what is the utterances really means, or what is the speaker really wants us to do. That's why indirect speech is used as an approach in dealing with discourse analysis. So in getting the hidden meaning or getting something behind the utterances, we use more indirect speech. Okay, that's my explanation. Thank you for your time.
I guess I
Okay.
can.
Is there any questions for us? Question
Or suggestions?
or comment? Whatever, or criticize us.
Or additional knowledge maybe?
Additional information.
Question please?
If there's
Or
no
maybe
question,
you need time to process.
if no, maybe we should.
explanation was crystal clear. So we learned in class. Except asking ourselves whether highlight
Okay, if there's no question, should we close the board? Class.
Maybe you have some questions for us.
You want that? Something.
Okay, I just want to highlight something from your presentation. So what I can understand is that in direct speech, pretty much it's like generally about sentence that is more polite than direct speech. For example, like could you pass this out? Rather than an indirect speech. So what I can see here, the indirect speech is more polite than direct speech. And also, based on this book, I can see that Giorgio book, it is said that, indirect speech acts are generally associated with greater politeness in English than direct speech act. But in this book, there is nothing written that why it's always polite, like why indirect speech act always polite. So maybe that's something that I was wondering about.
Yes, maybe based on my understanding that, as I said, that indirect speech act you mostly used by someone or a person that have high level of knowledge. So maybe as I don't know whether I don't want to classify people with educated or not educated, but in educated people maybe they don't want to be rude just by asking direct information or by asking direct question to somebody else. So educated person usually like muter-muter, usually he didn't catch straight to the point. So we give the other form of communicative function or different form. So
Maybe it is interesting
Yes,
to do a study about indirect speech and the correlation between indirect speech and then the level of education
Yes.
that someone maybe because
yeah.
we said generally only polite words.
And then based on the May book, it is also said that usually if you use based on the some research, this is research based. This is not my opinion. It is said that if you use indirect speech act, it is like you show a power to somebody else. Yes, this is based on research by I forgot the name.
But can it be not polite? Do you think so?
I think if we talk about politeness, technical politeness, it's different culture. Because if we read if I read here, for example, like you want to somebody else to do something for you, but in English, in asking request, you have to use the question like would you mind, could you, but maybe it's different in Indonesia. I don't know about that deeply, but this is the English culture. If you are want to request somebody else to do something, so you should use the question like would you mind. So it is like it's not polite if you use imperative form based on the article. So it's also have dealing with the culture. There is polite.
Yeah, because maybe it's about culture as well, because in Indonesia, indirect speech pretty much about negative thing.
Yeah.
For example, we meet someone and then they look tacky or something, and then we can just say, oh, you look awesome, but actually not.
Yeah.
So it's pretty much indirect speech, but completely contrast from this theory. This theory said it's always polite, but in our culture, usually not polite at all, the indirect speech. So yeah, so maybe it's about culture.
Yes, and also deal with the implicature. So I don't know the exactly different between indirect speech and the implicature, because implicature also talk about hidden meaning. Right?
Yeah,
so meaning behind the analysis, but it's different theory, speech and implicature. But it's almost the same. Yes. Yeah. That's ideas.
Maybe a question about politeness or impoliteness.
It's not our topic.
Will be explained in the next and next.
Politeness will be handled by Rahma.
Yes. It's a subtopic in this particular. Is there any question? Okay, enough. I think that's all from our presentation today. Thank you for your attention.